We will be going to Canberra now. Prime Minister Julia Gillard is addressing the media. Coverage of the Queensland flood continues.
Just wait one moment. Okay. For many days now, Queenslanders have been battling with floodwaters and the misery that floodwaters bring. And many Australians have watched this battle, and they've shown their sympathy and support by donating to the various flood relief efforts. I'm sure that many Queenslanders and Australians right around the nation would have been hoping that the worst of this was behind us and that we were shortly to move from the immediate crisis into a recovery phase. Tragically, that hasn't occurred. Yesterday we saw some simply shocking events in Toowoomba and other communities in the Lockyer Valley. Literally walls of water smashing into cars and to buildings. We've seen very dramatic images of cars tossed around, of people on roofs of houses and on the roofs of cars, and people literally hanging on for dear life to trees and to signposts. I'm sure those images have shocked Australians. That means that now, of course, we are in a situation where, as a nation, we are grieving the loss of 8 Australian lives, 4 of them children. 72 Australians are unaccounted for, and that means in Queensland and around the nation there are people who are frightened, people who are desperately waiting for news of their loved ones, a weight that would be bearing so heavily on them. It's very hard to imagine what a weight like that is like. So to those people who are bereaved, to those who are now waiting for news of their loved ones, I want to say to them as Prime Minister, my thoughts and my sympathies are with you. The thoughts and sympathies of all Australians are with you in these dreadful and difficult circumstances. The nation does need to brace itself for the fact that the death toll as a result of yesterday's flash flooding and walls of water is likely to rise. We know that search and rescue efforts are underway. Difficult weather circumstances continue to prevail, and I have been continuously in contact with Queensland Premier Anna Bligh. But with 72 Australians unaccounted for, with floodwaters so dangerous and moving so swiftly, we do need to brace ourselves for the likelihood of further bad news. Today I have been briefed by our National Security Advisor, by the Head of Emergency Management Australia. I have spoken to the Commanding Officer of Operation Queensland Flood Assist. As we speak, we have helicopters, Black Hawks and Sea Kings in the air, working hand in glove with the Queensland emergency personnel on search and rescue efforts. As those search and rescue efforts continue, floodwaters are now threatening more parts of Queensland, including Ipswich and parts of Brisbane. There are some communities that have been hit by floodwaters for a second time. Hit once, evacuated, gone back, and now being hit again. So the circumstances in Queensland continue to be very dire indeed. We will continue to provide the support of the Australian Defence Force, and I have made it very clear to Premier Anna Bligh that any resource she needs from the Australian Defence Force will be made available to the people of Queensland to assist them during this very difficult period. In my various conversations with Premier Anna Bligh, she has made very clear to me the courage and commitment of emergency services personnel who have faced these incredibly harrowing circumstances over the last 24 hours. Indeed, they were joined by volunteers, by others, including by media helicopters, to help get people off roofs last night. To everyone who has helped so courageously and so competently, I give my thanks. I know you are still out there, still engaged in search and rescue. I thank you for what you have done, what you are continuing to do, and what you will do in the days ahead. Our emergency services personnel have simply been magnificent in very, very difficult circumstances. I would like to say to the people of Queensland that I understand the past few days have been very harrowing indeed, and that there are still more dark days ahead. But the spirit of Queensland is to face these circumstances with courage and with determination. We're seeing that on display today. We saw it on display even in the amazing images in Toowoomba yesterday. To the people of Queensland, can I also say, Australians are thinking of you, and anything that the Australian nation can do to assist the people of Queensland in these difficult days will be done. Queenslanders are showing courage and determination. We will meet that courage and determination with the assistance they need in these very difficult days of the Queensland flood crisis. I do note that we are also facing floodwaters in other parts of the nation, in New South Wales, and in a typically Australian contrast, we have people fighting bushfires in Western Australia. Right around the nation, there are Australians who are doing it tough, Australians who are also showing a great deal of courage. Our thoughts are particularly with those caught up in this immediate and very difficult crisis in Queensland, but around the nation our thoughts are with people battling floodwaters, battling fire, battling these difficult circumstances. I'm very happy to take any questions.
Prime Minister, you say you'll do anything you can to help. Is it possible that you would be setting aside your target of bringing the budget back to surplus by 2013 in order to pay for the clean-up of road damage to other public infrastructure? Is it time to set that aside and commit yourself to long-term funding for this infrastructure?
Well, we are committed to long-term funding for the rebuilding of Queensland, and in the days ahead, as floodwaters ultimately subside, the rebuilding task will become clearer, and what we need to do and finance to enable Queensland to overcome the damage of these floods will become clearer. We will do that and bring the budget to surplus in 2012-13, and yes, that will entail some tough choices.
Can that be sustained?
But yes, we will do both. But the immediate task at the moment, we are searching for Australians who are unaccounted for. The immediate task is to facilitate all of those efforts. For a number of days now during the Queensland flood crisis, we have had the Australian Defence Force there through Operation Queensland Flood Assist. We have some 150 Defence Force personnel who have been there working alongside the people of Queensland and the emergency services personnel. What I've said to Premier Anna Bligh, and what I want to restate here very clearly, is anything else that is needed from the Australian Defence Force will be made available to assist Queensland as they face these incredibly difficult circumstances. We'll just go to the back.
What is your sense of the predictability of this disaster, whether or not the extent of this could have been foreseen? And would you like to see better warning systems, perhaps the use of the SMS warning system developed after Black Saturday for flood-prone areas?
Well, the SMS warning system has been used in parts of Queensland, so something that was learned through the devastation in Victoria with the bushfires was worked on, and now that is available and can be used in other disaster circumstances. In the days to come, I'm sure that there will be a review of things like weather warnings and the like. That is work to come in the days ahead, but right now, in the midst of this emergency, our thoughts are on dealing with the emergency and our efforts are on dealing with that emergency. Can I just say too, and you know, the reviews will happen in the future, but I think we live in a world, we approach a world with more technology than we've ever had before, with resources available to us that were unimaginable for earlier generations. But the power of nature can still be a truly frightening power, and we've seen that on display in this country. We've seen it through fire, we're now seeing it through flood. Yes.
Are you, I'm sorry to press the question, but are you in any way concerned that the people, even with the emergency alerts, SMS and other means, that people weren't forewarned enough?
What I've seen today is I've seen the experts from the Weather Bureau in Brisbane talk about the ability, the limits to their ability to track these extreme weather events in individual localities. Now, I am not an expert from the Weather Bureau. You would have seen that at Anna Bligh's press conference, she was joined by an expert from her Weather Bureau. So that information is there. I'm sure people will want to review and look at what else can be done by weather bureaus, but I believe he sought to explain how this event happened with no warning and happened with such severity.
Right, just on the first question, back to the first question. Because the commitment on the surplus is so central to the government's objectives, does that mean that any rebuilding investment would have to be funded from perhaps other infrastructure funding that's been set aside already, or that there would have to be savings elsewhere in Commonwealth outlays to pay for that rebuilding?
Look, we will make the choices in the federal budget that are necessary to work with Queensland on the rebuilding and to bring the budget to surplus in 2012-13. And there may be some tough choices. We want to make sure that we are working to rebuild critical infrastructure in Queensland, and that will be done. Those budget choices will be made in our budget cycle, and we don't even know yet and can't know. It's not possible for anyone to know what the damage bill is going to be from these floods across Queensland. We're only going to know that as floodwaters subside, and then we'll be working with state government, with local government on the rebuilding. Yes.
How can you fund the health deals from July this year when the states haven't actually handed over their GST revenue? It's only 6 months away. Is it possible to proceed with the reforms that you planned without that money in the bank?
Oh, there's plenty of time to talk about health and health agreements.
Well, we're talking about your budget, Prime Minister.
Can I ask, you've given a sense of ADF personnel are up in Queensland. What other Commonwealth resources have been deployed up there? Can you give us an idea?
Well, the Commonwealth resources, the ADF, we've had the Joint Task Force operating, 150 personnel. We've had helicopter assets. We've got helicopters in the air now for the search and rescue efforts. We've had helicopters working in Rockhampton for communities that have been isolated. You would have seen, for example, those Black Hawk helicopters have been used to do things like medical evacuations. We've used fixed-wing aircraft, including C-130s, to fly supplies around that have been needed. We've got those huge military trucks available also to take supplies around, and they are trucks that are able to sometimes push through in circumstances where other vehicles can't. And we, are there standing by and will deploy whatever assets are necessary to assist Queensland. Queenslanders through.
Prime Minister, in terms of
Yes.
offers from overseas and what we need, what offers have we got for help and assistance from overseas, and what have we taken up?
Well, we've taken up the offer of New Zealand for personnel, and those personnel have already hit the ground and are deployed in Queensland assisting. We've had messages of sympathy and support and offers of assistance from literally around the world, from the United States, the United Nations, the EU. In our own region, we've had similar offers from China, Indonesia, Japan, Singapore and